Okay, so let's talk about January 7th, 2026, a day when a federal immigration operation in Minneapolis just goes sideways, turning fatal and kicking off this massive firestorm of controversy. We're going to break down what happened that day, look at the two completely different stories that came out, and trace the political fallout that shot all the way up to Washington. But to really get what happened, we've got to rewind a little bit to the days just before the incident. You're seeing that number, 2,000. That's how many federal agents the Trump administration reportedly sent into the Minneapolis area for what ICE itself called the largest immigration operation ever. So you can just imagine this massive show of force. It just cast this pall over the city. People were on high alert. And yeah, that federal presence, it was not welcome. Here's what Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had to say. He flat out accused the administration of waging a war on his state. You had residents, city officials, everyone was reporting seeing more and more federal agents around town. It really put the entire community on edge long before a single shot was ever fired. And then, on the morning of January 7th, all that tension, it just boiled over. The whole situation erupted into this fatal encounter on a quiet, snowy residential street. And man, things just unfolded at a blistering pace that day. Okay, so 9:30 a.m., you get shots fired. By 12:40 p.m., we're talking just 3 hours later, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, is already out there publicly and forcefully disputing the federal government's story. Fast forward to 2:15 p.m., Governor Walz has the National Guard on standby, and by 5 p.m., you've got the DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, holding a press conference, doubling down on the federal side of things. It was just a day of completely diverging stories from the very beginning. So who was at the center of all this? Her name was Renee Nicole Good. Officials confirmed pretty quickly she was a U.S. citizen. And, according to city leaders, she wasn't even a target of the icy operation. They said she was acting as a legal observer, basically just monitoring what the agents were doing in her neighborhood. And right there, from that one single moment on Portland Avenue, two, completely irreconcilable versions of the truth emerged. Both of them supposedly based on the exact same few seconds of video. All right, so the federal government's story, it came out almost instantly. A DHS spokesperson didn't hesitate to frame this as a violent assault. They called it an act of domestic terrorism, claiming Renee Good had weaponized her car to try and kill federal officers. That's some heavy language. And coming from the highest levels of government, it really set the tone for the whole national debate that was about to explode. And that narrative, it was echoed all the way to the top. President Trump claimed Good had, and I'm quoting here, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem backed that up, saying the officer fired in self-defense, fearing for his life. So, the picture they're painting is of a necessary, life-saving response to a direct and deadly threat. But local officials who had actually seen the bystander videos, well, they had a very different and, let's just say, very blunt reaction. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, he did not mince words. He called the whole self-defense story garbage. And, well, to use his word, bullshit. So what was their story based on? The local account was backed up by eyewitnesses and multiple videos. And what they reported was that the car was moving pretty slowly, that Renee Good was actually trying to drive away when the agent, who was standing right in front of her car, just opened fire. And this is the critical part. The car only seems to speed up after the shots rang out. So you can see the stark difference here. The federal account describes this violent attack. The witness account, it describes a driver putting her car in reverse, then drive, and then hearing 3 shots. One side claims an officer fired, fearing for his life. A witness on the other side says, flat out, she was driving away and they killed her. We're talking about 2 completely different realities. Okay, so with all this political shouting, it's really easy to lose sight of the actual person at the center of this. So who was Renee Good? Her friends and family, they don't want her remembered for this one moment, but for the life she lived. She was a poet, a writer, a mom, and according to her own Instagram bio, a self-described shitty guitar strummer from Colorado. Just a regular person. Her mother, Donna Ganger, she told reporters her daughter was just an amazing human being, super compassionate, someone who spent her life taking care of other people. She just believed her daughter was probably terrified during that whole chaotic encounter. And the details of her life, they really ground this whole national debate in a deeply personal, tragic loss. So she was originally from Colorado. She was a mother of 3,
And she had just dropped her 6-year-old son off at school literally moments before this happened. And that son, he's now an orphan because his father had actually passed away just a few years earlier in 2023. She was a graduate of Old Dominion University with a degree in English.
As you can imagine, the shooting immediately kicked off this furious political and social firestorm that spread way beyond the streets of Minneapolis. The response on the ground was, well, instantaneous. Almost immediately, hundreds of people gathered at the scene for protests and vigils. Mayor Frey held a press conference pretty much demanding that ICE get the F out of Minneapolis. Governor Walz put the state's National Guard on standby, to prevent any further unrest. And 2 separate investigations were launched, one by the FBI and one by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, or BCA. Okay, but here's a crucial point. One of those investigations hit a major roadblock almost immediately. The state-level one, the BCA, they actually pulled out of the case, and they alleged that federal authorities were restricting their access to key evidence. So what does that mean? It means the investigation was left primarily in the hands of the FBI, which of course is a federal agency. And the fallout, it didn't stay local. It quickly reached Washington, D.C. Democratic Congresswoman Robin Kelly from Illinois announced she was going to file articles of impeachment against the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. She accused her of obstruction of justice and of unleashing, in her words, rogue ICE agents on American cities.
And this whole thing, it really forces us to ask a fundamental question for our time, right? In an age where a fatal encounter can be filmed from a dozen different angles and seen by millions of people in an instant, what happens when the official story and the evidence you can see with your own 2 eyes are in direct conflict? It really forces us to ask, who do we believe, the government or our own eyes?